The Hyundai Veloster is something rather different. It has the stylistic appeal of a coupe, yet features a clever 1+2 body with a cleverly concealed extra side door, offering at least some of the practicality you'd get from a family hatch. There's the option of turbocharged as well as normally aspirated 1.6 litre petrol power, but this isn't really a car aimed at driving enthusiasts. Instead, its target market will happily match the style and practicality on offer to tight pricing, a huge kit list and low running costs. Here's the new face of Hyundai.
If you think of Hyundai as a value brand, then you won't be expecting it to have much of a heritage in smart sports coupes. You'd be wrong, actually. The Korean company first entered the affordable end of this segment way back in 1996 with a Hyundai coupe model so appealing that it even outsold Italian competitors in their home market. After a best-forgotten facelift in 1999, 2002 saw an even prettier new generation coupe model launched that sold steadily until production ended at the end of 2009. Now, the Koreans took their time about creating a replacement. It would, we were promised, be just that little bit different. And so it is. Meet the Veloster. It's a car with a unique selling point, rather easy to spot. The so-called 1+2 body style, offering the looks of a racy coupe with at least some of the practicality of a family hatchback. Now, meeting this rather challenging design brief meant doing things with doors. So you've got a single long one on the driver's side, but a pair of shorter openings opposite, with a few deft styling tweaks to disguise the fact. Now, only Mini's Clubman has tried this in the past, and then only half-heartedly, with a driver's side, rear side door that dumped its occupants into the roadway. In contrast, Hyundai's designers have done the job properly, creating separate body shells for left and right-hand drive markets so that the extra back door will always be available to you at the curbside. Sounds sensible, but the car that clothes all this ingenuity is claimed to be resolutely sporting. Let's try it. Racy looks are one thing, racy roadway performance is quite another. Many owners buying at the budget end of the compact coupe segment simply don't want it, and for them the entry-level Veloster that I'm driving here will be quite sufficient. The 140 PS on offer from its 1.6 litre GDI petrol engine is just enough to make things interesting, aided by a low curb weight that makes this Hyundai usefully lighter than many of its rivals. Rest to 60 occupies 9.7 seconds on the way to a top speed of 125 miles an hour. The kind of performance, in fact, that you get from a Mini Cooper. For those in search of more, a turbocharged version of this engine is on offer, cutting the rest to 60 time down to 8.4 seconds and offering a lot more torque, 270 newton meters as opposed to the 167 newton meters that I have here. Now, with this variant, the engineers at Hyundai have addressed all of the things about the entry-level version of this car that might leave enthusiasts somewhat lukewarm. So the thin, reedy engine note is addressed by a sports exhaust. There's a quicker ratio steering rack to give sharper cornering turn-in. And suspension tweaks allow greater dynamic composure. That's tweaks to the front and to the rear. There's also a set of more widely spaced gear ratios so that less use is needed of the rather notchy 6-speed manual gearbox, which has a detached, lifeless game station type feel. Even with all this in place though, you won't find Veloster ownership featuring too highly on the wish lists of many track day enthusiasts. These are people for whom tyre smoking is likely to be tiresome, and therefore people for whom less will probably be more when it comes to ownership of this Hyundai. They'll like the well-judged ride, the excellent refinement, and they'll probably also want to consider the optional dual-clutch automatic transmission, the Korean maker's first, which promises really effortless ownership. If you've stayed with me this far, then you've probably got the idea by now. We're talking about a car aimed at the less dynamically demanding section of the small coupe market. So think Renault Megane Coupe or Kia Proceed, rather than Volkswagen Scirocco or Peugeot RCZ. It's a car that feels happiest being driven at 6 or 7 tenths rather than flat out, which means that if you're really not interested in rubbing the shoulders off your tyres, then you probably find a lot to like. This, we're told, is the next evolution of Hyundai's design language. They call it fluidic sculpture, and if this really is the way it's going, then future models are going to look very dramatic indeed. Everywhere you look on this Veloster, you'll find signs of styling flourish. A grille here, a slash there, with lines, slopes, curves and cutaways all busily converging into a surprisingly cohesive end result. From every angle, this car looks different. I've certainly never tired of looking at it. While there are countless design cues that may remind you of other cars, the Veloster somehow still emerges with its own very distinct look and feel, with a top glasshouse section that Hyundai claims is inspired by a motorcyclist's crash helmet. From the rear, twin central exhausts, reflectors set into the wheel arches, rear combination lights curved to follow the bodywork, and cutaways in the tailgate all offer further distinctive touches. Were this to be a turbo model, you'd recognise it by its larger rear spoiler, the LED accents in the rear lights, a unique set of bumpers, and moving further around, things like a bolder front grille, inbuilt front fog lights, and larger 18-inch alloy wheels. Ultimately, though, it's the doors that define this design. We're talking pure sports coupe here on the driver's side, as at first glance you might think is also the case on the opposite flank of the car. But a closer look reveals this 1+2 design's cleverness. Now here, instead of one long driver's door, you've got two shorter openings separated by a central pillar, with the rear door handle artfully disguised in the window frame. Now, only the Mini Clubman has tried this kind of thing before, but there the extra rear side door opens behind the driver out onto the roadway. With this Veloster, as long as you're facing with the traffic flow, the rear side door will always put occupants out onto the pavement. So far, so good. But there's not any point in a coupe, any coupe, offering a rear side door if the accessibility on offer is unusable and the space available once you've climbed inside is impossibly cramped. The Veloster doesn't disappoint in either respect. Yes, the door itself, and so the opening it creates, is a bit of an odd shape, so climbing in is a bit of a wriggle, but it's certainly preferable to squeezing in behind a folded forward front seat. And once you are on board, because there's no central transmission tunnel running the length of the cabin, it's easy enough to slide over to the opposite side of the car. Once in situ, there's decent standards of legroom, but headroom will be at a bit of a premium for anybody over about 5'8" in height. Now, there's this ridge at the end of the roof section that taller passengers will instinctively position their heads behind, which will put them at risk of being crowned by the rear glass panel if the person closing the tailgate isn't being attentive. Let's lift that tailgate and see if the Veloster is as practical for luggage as it is for people. The answer broadly is yes, by the standards of a small sports coupe. Okay, so the 320 litre boot space isn't quite as large as the trunk you'll find in, say, an Astra GTC, but it's usefully bigger than rivals like Volkswagen Scirocco, the Mini Coupe and the Honda CR-Z. And the space is usefully sized with minimal wheel arch intrusion. In fact, if you load it right up to the ceiling, you'll get 440 litres of space. And if that's not enough, then of course you can push the split folding rear seat backs forward to free up 984 litres of fresh air. Behind the wheel, the aesthetics are almost as busy as they are outside, with plenty of Veloster branding and a set of deeply cowled dials in front of you. Perhaps most noticeable is the Darth Vader style V-shaped centre console with its prominent air vents, inspired, claims Hyundai, by the fuel tank and exhausts of a sports motorbike. I'm not sure about that, but it certainly isn't dull. The nicest touch, as far as I'm concerned, is this 7-inch colour TFT touchscreen, via which you can play from USB or MP3 players, and you can even hitch it up to a games console. You'll be paying somewhere between £18,000 and £25,000 for your Veloster, depending on the engine, gearbox and trim combination you choose. Now here we're concentrating on the normally aspirated 1.6 litre GDI petrol version, entry-level variants of which sit at the lower end of that pricing spectrum. If you want the slightly more frugal blue drive version of this model, then you'll need to find an extra £350. If you don't care about that, then the two premiums you'll need to consider paying will be, well, first for the dual clutch DCT automatic gearbox, which is an extra £1,250, and the sport trim, which is an extra £2,500. Now, there are, of course, any number of sporty super minis and family hatchbacks you could compare this car against. Some even have coupe-style looks. I'm thinking particularly of Citroen's slightly more expensive DS4 with its concealed rear doors. But most will be considering this Hyundai against other affordable compact coupes. And value-wise, this Veloster sits somewhere in the middle of that class. So you could save a little by opting for, say, a comparable Honda CR-Z or maybe a Mini Coupe Cooper, or you could pay a little more and get a comparable Renault Megane Coupe 1.4 TCE 130 or a Vauxhall Astra GTC 1.4 16-valve turbo 120 PS. All of those are different options. You'll need to pay quite a lot more if you want something like a Volkswagen Scirocco. Even a base petrol model, let's say a 1.4 TSI, will cost you a couple of £1,000s more. And things like Peugeot's RCZ and Audi's TT are obviously much more expensive again. Of course, none of these coupe segment rivals have the versatility of this Veloster's extra rear door. Now, it's a feature that could make all the difference for, say, someone with a young family who'd otherwise be looking at a more boring family hatch, but realises that here is a way to get into something a bit sexier that they can still sell as being practical to their other halves. Now, it also helps that this car is very well equipped. Even the entry-level version comes with 17-inch alloy wheels, front fog lights, daytime running lamps, auto headlamps, reverse parking sensors, a 7-inch TFT colour touchscreen that can be connected to games consoles and play films from smartphones. You've got Bluetooth for your mobile phone with voice recognition, and a decent quality MP3 and USB compatible CD stereo with steering wheel controls and an aux in point. Oh, and climate control as well. Now, if you pay extra for the sport trim, you can expect to find larger alloys, black leather trim with heated front seats, keyless entry and go, cruise control, and a large glass panoramic roof that looks great but will rob taller drivers of a bit of headroom. There aren't too many options available, but I think I'd be tempted by the media pack, which includes satellite navigation, a reverse parking camera and an upgraded stereo with 8 speakers, an amp and a subwoofer. Go for the sport trim level, and a red leather interior is optional with various colour choices. Safety-wise, this car achieved a 5-star Euro NCAP safety testing result, ahead of rivals like Volkswagen Scirocco and Vauxhall's Astra GTC. It comes with 6 airbags, anti-whiplash head restraints, plus all the expected electronic aids for braking, traction and stability control to hopefully ensure that you'll never have to use them. The VSM Vehicle Stability Management System is especially clever, keeping this car stable under acceleration, even when one side of the vehicle has less grip than the other. The Veloster's excellent value for money is compounded by a very respectable set of cost of ownership figures, day-to-day running costs kept very firmly in check. The 1.6 litre GDI petrol model that I'm driving here, the normally aspirated variant, manages 148 grams per kilometre of CO2 and 43.5 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. Now, if you want to improve upon that, then there are a couple of ways that you can do it. The first is actually by specifying an automatic gearbox. The twin clutch auto transmission is slightly more efficient, so CO2 returns improve to 145 grams per kilometre of CO2, and the combined cycle fuel economy rises to 44.1 miles to the gallon. The other slightly more cost-effective way of reducing your bills is to plump for the blue drive version of this model, with its low rolling resistance tyres and ISG intelligent stop and go system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, say stuck at the lights or waiting in traffic. Now, thanks to these tweaks, fuel consumption on the combined cycle improves to 47.9 miles to the gallon, and the CO2 figure also improves to 137 grams per kilometre. A gear shift indicator light on the dash is included across the range to help ordinary owners get somewhere close to those figures on a regular basis. That's not the end of it. Excellent safety and security measures have combined to allow this car to get a pretty competitive insurance grouping rating. That's 16E, which is on a par with most mainstream rivals, but none of them can get close to the kind of aftercare package that this Hyundai includes as standard. It's called a 5-year triple care warranty, which covers you for 5 years of a manufacturer-backed warranty. It's unlimited mileage, 5 years of roadside assistance, and 5 years of annual vehicle health checks. Some cars offer a very straightforward customer proposition. The Veloster isn't one of them. You'll see it being compared to models like Volkswagen Scirocco and Peugeot's RCZ, but in reality it's nothing like them. What it does offer is a car for someone who maybe has a young family but isn't ready for the vanilla image of a 5-door family hatchback just yet. Or maybe a car for the coupe customer who values style and practicality over driving on door handles. Both types of buyers should like this Hyundai very much indeed. The price is right, it's got a great safety record, it's absolutely packed with standard equipment, and it looks anything but run-of-the-mill thanks to the 1+2 door system, which might seem a bit strange at first, but in practice works really well. Enthusiasts might not be quite so keen, but even they should find the turbo version of this model a genuinely fun steer. But you pay for its pace, of course, which to my mind makes this normally aspirated variant the better all-round package. Choose it and you'll be rewarded by a really innovative design with a lot more substance to it than the extrovert styling might suggest. A genuinely interesting Korean car then. Expect plenty more where this came from.